Hey, it's Jag. All right, all right, all right. I'll wind a pickup.
Yeah.
So my plan is to wind a bridge pickup today. And by that I mean it will be slightly on the higher output side as opposed to lower output. I'm still sticking with PAF sort of specs. I'm thinking I'll wind about 5,500 turns on each coil. So I'll have about 11,000 winds between the two coils. That should come out to somewhere around 8.5 to 9K. DC resistance doesn't really mean much in terms of the pickup. It can just be a general marker that we know we will have a higher output pickup, and it will probably be a little bit darker. I'll be using an Alnico 5 magnet. This pickup also will not be scatter wound. Scatter winding has to do with how the wire lays down on the coil, whether it lays down very evenly or whether it's going crisscrossing all over the place. So scatter winding mostly occurs from when you're hand guiding a pickup, but we can program the CNC winder to scatter wind as well. Again, because this is a bridge pickup, I don't want it to be overly harsh or overly bright. So by not having it scatter wound, having the winds be very even, that will increase the distributed capacitance in the pickup, which will also make the pickup a little bit darker. This is why scatter wound pickups tend to sound a little more open. There's less capacitance. So it retains more of the highs and clarity. Winding with no scatter will also allow me to put more turns on the coil. Like I say, I want about 5,500 winds on these coils, so I want to make sure I have enough room. I'll be running the winder clockwise, which means we'll be winding a counterclockwise coil. Both coils will be wound counterclockwise, and then we use the two finish leads of those coils connected together for the link between the coils, and that effectively has the electrical path going counterclockwise through one coil. Then it goes in through the finish and goes clockwise through the other coil and to where the start was of that coil. The slug coil will be north, screw coil will be south. So all that said, on with the winding. So this is my first actual coil wind. I've got a slug bobbin on the winder. I've got the wire going through the magnetic tensioner, following the proper path. I've got the tension adjustments set to their least tension per the instructions. The coil wire doesn't feel like it's being held too tense. This is my first test, but hoping that the coil will work, I'm going to actually see if I can wind this to the full number of turns. This is going to be a bridge humbucker with an A5 magnet. I want it to be a little bit overwound so that I have more output and a little bit darker. So I'm shooting for about anywhere from about 5,300 winds to maybe as high as 6,000 winds. My first couple of winds will just be 500 winds at 900 RPM, and I'm doing no scatter. If this first 500 goes, I'll do another 500, so we'll be at 1,000. And from there, we'll see about maybe upping the RPM from 900 to about 1,200 and do 1,000 winds at that point. So I'm going to hit play in Universal G-Code Center. Hopefully we don't have a disaster. Well, it's looking good so far. The wire is not going off the bobbin anyway, and looks like it's winding fairly evenly. I'm going to set CNC Pickup Winder to do 1,000 winds at 1,200 RPM now. Very little bounce on the tensioner arm. It's winding very evenly, so I'm very, very happy, very encouraged. We're at 600 winds right now. 850 winds, 900 winds, and stopped at 1,000, and traverse stopped just a little after that. So we'll do another run exactly the same, 1,000 winds at 1,200 RPM. And stopped right at 1,000 again. So that's a little under 3,000 winds right now. I'm going to stay at 1,200 RPM, but I'm going to tell it to do 2,000 winds now. That will take us to a little under 5,000. And 2,000 winds. So we've got 4,956 winds on this now. I'm going to go to 5,500 right now. 544 more winds. So there we go. We have that coil wound. It is a little bit bulged out in the middle, and it's a little narrower at the top than the bottom. So I do need to work on where I'm starting the traverse. I think I was a little close to the bottom end of the bobbin. Next time I do this, I'll set the traverse a little higher off the bottom of the bobbin, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to get this bobbin off the winder. All right, I'm set up and ready to wind the screw coil now. I'm going to do it the same way as I did the slug coil. I'm going to go 500 winds at 900 RPM twice. Then I will do 1,000 at 1,200 RPM. And then I will finish up at 2,000 RPM and whatever extra I need to get to 5,500 winds. I've got the spool of wire over here, and the wire is going up and through the tensioner. It goes through the pigtail up here, through these two felt pads, around the main tensioning wheel, and then through this guide wheel and up through the tensioning arm, and then down through the wire guide and onto the spool. Everything is looking like it's lining up okay. So we're ready to do our first run, 500 winds at 900 RPM, and we're going clockwise on the bobbin plate. So the bobbin itself will be wound counterclockwise. $200. 300, 400, 'and that's 500 winds, 499 and a half, but close enough. So I'm going to do the next 500 winds again at 900 RPM, and we'll see how it's looking. And 500 winds. So things are going well. I'm going to set up now for doing the next 1,000 winds at 1,200 RPM. Okay, 1,000 winds, 1,200 RPM. And we had a wire break. I'll get that off the spool, and we'll at least have a look at how that's going. It's actually winding quite nicely and evenly. I'm happy with how that was looking so far. Not so happy that that I've lost some wire, but that's to be expected when you're doing this. I'll have to check my footage later. I haven't done that, but while I was rethreading the wire back onto the bobbin, I noticed that the wire had looped around the tension arm up at the top. So I think that's what happened. I think there might have been a fair bit of bounce, and the wire just looped around the tension arm. I'm going to loosen the tension on that just a little bit and see if we can get that a little more straight. I'm going to do I think 100 winds and just see how much bounce we're getting on there at 1200 RPM. So here we go, 100 winds, 1200 RPM. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on the tension arm to see what it's doing. There was quite a bit of bounce on that arm, so I'm going to do some testing, come back and let you know what I've found. I think I have it dialed in now. So what was happening was that the tension arm was bouncing quite a bit, especially at the start. It always bounces a little bit more at the start than once things get going and then it settles in. It was bouncing a lot. I first tried loosening or lessening the tension on that arm, and it was bouncing even more. So I set the tension back, full tension on that arm, and then rather than having the arm set horizontal as in the instructions, I set it up at the angle. As I said in my last video, there's a little notch in here, and so I set it to that so the arm is up about a 45-degree angle. What that does is it effectively increases the vertical distance from the end of the tension arm to the wire guide, so it gives a little more distance, and it also effectively shortens the horizontal distance, so it creates a little more tension on that arm. And now I've gone through a number of tests at 1200 RPM. So I did a couple runs, a few runs at 100 winds, then a few runs at 500, and then I did one at about 600 or 700 just to even out the number of winds I had on the coil. Right now I've got 3,000 winds on the coil and I haven't broken any wire. So as a final test for this, I've got it set up to do 2,500 winds at 1200 RPM. So by the time I'm done, I have my 5,500 winds on this screw coil. And that will match the winds on the slug coil that I wound earlier, the one that went perfectly. And we'll be ready to assemble this hot bridge pickup. I've also set my my other camera so that you can actually see the end of the tension arm and the bounce. It will bounce a fair bit just for the first second or so till the winder gets up to speed, and then it will even out, and it does vibrate, but not very erratically, which is I think what was causing the problem. With that bouncing like that, it can break the wire, or as happened when I first broke the wire, it looped around. Another thing that I found is there's a little pink pigtail that goes right in the bottom here. And when I first was checking out what was going on, I noticed that the wire had wrapped around there about 5 or 6 times. So that would have been messing with the tension. So I took that pigtail right out. I don't think I need it there. So it's working so far. So here we go, 2,500 winds at 1,200 RPM. If we don't break any wire, I think I have it dialed. $500 winds, so far so good. 1,000 winds, no problem so far. 1,500 winds. 2,000 winds. And 2,500 winds. I think we've got it dialed. Just waiting for the traverse to stop. So we had a good long time of the traverse going after the winds were done, which is what we want. We don't want the traverse to stop before the winder stops. So the coil's looking good. It's looking very full. We are now at 5,500 winds. Off camera, I soldered the leads for the start and finish wires on both of the coils, and I'm now installing the slugs into the slug coil. I used bobbin tape around the coil. It's underneath the lead wires, and then over top I ran some coil tape around just to make the leads neat and tidy and both come out the same end. A lot of people use a drill press to press the slugs into the coil. You don't really need that. You don't really need any kind of press or anything to put these slugs in. They press in fairly easily. So what I do is I put all 6 slugs in the coil. I just do 1 slug at a time and just press them in. And then I just make sure that the slugs are pushed all the way into the coil. And the next thing I'm going to do is just check the DC resistance of that coil. And we got 4.38K on that coil. The other one should be pretty close to that. So overall, we're going to have a little bit under 9K DC resistance on this humbucker. The DC resistance doesn't really indicate too much. Higher resistance means you're going to have a higher output pickup. Lower resistance means lower output. Higher resistance also means the pickup will sound a little darker. Lower means it will sound a little clearer. But there are other things that affect that as well. The type of magnet you put in, what the inductance of the coils in the pickup are, the distributed capacitance, all of that has an effect on the tone. So now I'll install the screws in the screw side of the coil, and we are just about ready to start final assembly of the pickup. Don't screw the screws on the screw coil in all the way just yet. We have some other assembly to do before we can screw those in. I'm using old school style hookup wire here. So it has a braid and then a single conductor in the middle, and we need to strip back a little bit of this braid. Usually I strip that braid back just about 1/4 of an inch or so, and then you can slide the braid down out of your way. We want to expose about 1/4 inch or so of this wire under this pushback cloth insulation. Once we've got that exposed, we can tin that wire. I'm going to use a little flat file just to scuff the edge of the pickup fence here. It will make the solder stick a little bit, just a little bit better. And with that soldered in there, we're going to lie this wire, this hookup wire, as flat to the base plate as we can. Just along, they call this the fence, right back here. We also need to solder the start wire of the screw coil to ground here as well. So I like to assemble the pickup before I do the final wiring. But before I finalize soldering the leads coming off the coils, I like to have them in place on the bobbin plate, just because it's less tugging and pulling on these lead wires, which can pull that very fine coil wire off. So I'm going to start by assembling the slug coil to the plate, and it's going to be north slug coil. I've got the magnet and the slug coil in there. I'm going to put the screws for the slug coil in, but not tighten it right up. The start of the screw coil will actually be the ground, and the start of the slug coil will be hot. So before I put the screw coil right in place, I'm just going to get that start lead soldered to the ground on the pickup plate. I can slide the screw coil in place and get that screwed down. And I will start the screws for the screw coil. Get them in through their holes. And with the first 2 screws of the screw coil started, I can tighten these bottom screws for the bobbins. So all I have left to do is to solder the link between the 2 coils right here, and then solder the hot to the hookup wire. And tuck that link. Final solder the hot. And a little heat shrink over that. Another wrap of coil tape. And a wrap of cloth tape all the way around. I like to start it at the end where the wires are not. And there we have one pickup, fully wound and assembled. That's the first pickup on my new CNC Pickup Winder, done and dusted. It's turned out quite well. About 8.8K total DC resistance, so right in that range I was shooting for. I'm not going to pot this pickup. I often don't pot my pickups that I wind for myself. I like some microphonics, and usually I don't have a lot of issue with that in terms of feedback and squealing. If the coils are screwed down tight and the coils were wound properly and tight enough and the tape is on there snugly, I usually find that's good enough. If I find that this is giving me a lot of trouble with feedback or too much handling noise, I can always pot it later. My next video will be a lot more relating to just the fine tuning and testing of the winder. If you're interested in that kind of thing, keep an eye on my channel. That next video on fine tuning the winder will be the last one for now about the CNC winder. And then I'm going to get started on that tube bass recording preamp I've talked about. For today, that's it. We've got one pickup wound. It turned out very well. I'm very happy with it. It matched all the specs I was shooting for. I have not measured the Gauss and the inductance and all of that, but I'm pretty confident that this is going to have roughly the sound I want. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check my band, One Soul Thrust. Links, as always, are in the description below. And until the next video, we'll see you.